Welcome to the Pizza and PE podcast, the Triple P, where a group of friends get together each week to eat pizza and discuss PE.
Hey, come on. Keith, how are you?
Hello. Just got back from, Connecticut, home of the pizza capital of the United States, for those of you that are listening.
Well,
That's
I
a real
think you
sign.
mentioned that on every podcast that we do, is that you've got to mention Connecticut. And to our listeners only who may not be viewing this on YouTube, Keith has on his backdrop, because he changes it every single time, one that says, "Welcome to Connecticut, home of the pizza capital of the world." So there it is. Keith, you're not allowed to talk about Connecticut any longer. You said it right from the start. Glad that you ripped that Band-Aid off right away.
That's official, though. That's when you come into the state, that sign is now there.
Okay, so is it like the world's greatest cheeseburger, the world's greatest hamburger? Like, what makes it official? Everybody has a world's greatest something.
When you come into North Carolina, it says, "Welcome to North Carolina, home of the Tar Heels National Championship, blah, 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 blah."
Okay.
Well, here we are.
I'm just
Pizza
very
capital.
curious to see if there was any fact checking in that, and to see if it was really credible and valid information, and how it was scored and how it was assessed. And then truly, how does it get that name?
Well, just ask Dave Portnoy. He does all the pizza reviews.
Oh, because he is the expert. All right, Keith, I want to get right to it, though, because I've been really excited about this guest for some time. We have been going back and forth trying to coordinate our schedules, try to get it over the summer. I was traveling. He's doing things with kids, coaching soccer. And then school happens, and basically life happens. And here we are in September. And so finally, I have Andy Milne. I believe I said that correct. I was saying Milne at first, but it's Milne. It's a Scottish name. And I don't know why I just said Scottish, but it's a Scottish name. But he is our first health educator on this podcast. We've had principals. We've had a superintendent. We've had a former student. We've had PE teachers. Have I left any other categories out?
District coordinators.
District coordinators, that's correct. And he is our very first health educator. And I want to start this podcast by sharing my experience when I first started teaching in 1994. Doesn't seem so long ago, but it is, 30 plus years ago in 1994. But when I first started, Keith, and I think I've shared this story with you because we've been working for a long time together. But when I first started and going to state conferences, that's where I truly learned a lot of the best practices, games, activities, lessons, classroom management, just overall, just really went after a lot of state associations, conferences to really get better at becoming a teacher. And what I noticed right away, there was a clear visual divide when I would go, let's say, to a state association or a national, conference. The PE teachers, they wore the warm-up suits. The health teachers, they wore the business suits. It was really weird, really clear. And they didn't even converse. They didn't even talk. And when you see them in the expo area or walking in the hallways, going to different sessions, the health teachers went in that room, PE teachers went into the activity rooms. And I thought it was really, really, really odd to me, because I really thought that, and I was probably only 22, 23 at the time. I thought, well, health and PE, we all share a same vision and mission to basically support students' health and well-being, and to teach kids everyday skills, whether it's in a gymnasium or in a health classroom. And I knew at that time that when I graduated in 1994, even though I stepped into an elementary physical education role, that I was going to be a middle school PE teacher, middle school health teacher, high school PE teacher, high school health teacher. I wanted to teach every grade level, and I wanted to teach health and PE because we were dual certified. And I think at the time I was also going to get my master's in health education at that time. So that's why I'm so thrilled to have Andy from SlowChatHealth, Illinois teacher, to be on. He's nationally recognized. He actually, in October of 2019, if you have not seen this, everybody, and we're going to talk about this more in the show, If you haven't seen it or listened to it, Andy gave a TED talk that was titled, "This is Not Your Parents' Health Class." It's amazing. It's amazing. And he actually apologizes for the style of health education that used to be taught by reading chapters in a textbook, maybe answering questions in the back of a textbook, filling out a worksheet. We got messages, because this is the type of instruction I got even when I was in high school. Hey, don't eat this, eat that, or, don't do drugs, don't have sex, scare tactics, no skills at all. It was all just, here's a bunch of information. And honestly, it was all kind of stuff like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, instead of do this. And here's how you should navigate. Here's how you should communicate. Here's how you should advocate. So I'm going to get him on very soon so that we can start this conversation, because I've been wanting to have a conversation with him for a long, long time. And even though I've seen him at conferences, often I have not been able to go to some of his sessions because I've been presenting at the same time or right after or before. But I've been following his work for quite some time, because he is one, in my opinion, has been instrumental in bridging the physical education teachers and the health education teachers together. Instead of standing apart, we stand together. He showed how those two disciplines are integrated, and we should be collaborating and we should be communicating to one another. So I've already shared that he has SlowChatHealth. He's been a TED Talk. He's a keynote speaker. He's a blogger, which those who are new to SlowChatHealth, you're going to see tons of blogs that you're going to want to go back and you're going to want to click on and read tons and tons of articles. He's a podcaster. We're fortunate to have him even on the Pizza and Pete. And he's a husband and he's a father. He was Shape America's National Health Teacher of the Year in 2017. And he has over 11.6 thousand followers on X. So he is an extreme influencer. And like all our guests on this show, most importantly, he just wants to help every teacher, just to help teachers become better teachers, to address their pain points, provide instructional resources, be a thought partner, just so that we can help students learn everyday skills and be healthy for a lifetime. And huge influencer. And humble. You hear me all the time saying, I go after people who are humble, humble, humble. And he's one. So let's welcome Andy.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an introduction. I can't wait to meet this Andy Milne. He sounds amazing. Thank you.
That's really
I'm gonna snip that introduction and send it to my mom. She'll love that. Thank you so much for the introduction. And so happy to be here. You've had some wonderful guests on your podcast. So to be following on from super humble Mark Housel and Megara. I mean, Megara's episode was phenomenal as well. So thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, so is mom in London still, or?
Yeah, mum and dad are in England. They now have relocated up to Cambridge, which is somewhere kind of in the South Midlish. And we went back as a family for the first time in 7 years this summer and had a blast. It was nice to kind of top up on my Englishness, have some rain, some warm beer, see some mates and old friends, and visit some stomping grounds. And yeah, it was a great trip. It got me pumped up for the school year ahead.
Now, how old are your kids? And do you have one or two?
I got two boys. They're 12 and 10. So right now they're a really good age. Although having said that, I'm talking to my sophomore health students. And although I've got one foot in the lesson as a teacher, talking about, behaviors to come, I'm also thinking as a dad, my own boy isn't too far around the corner from experiencing some of this as well. So puberty's just kicking in. He's just starting to test us. But thankfully, I've got a whole library of books behind me. So the poor kid, I'm going to use him as a subject in all of my lessons from now on. He too has got the access to the books. So I expect him to be helping his friends out in the next few years when it comes to health.
But now, does he go? Now you're at a high school, correct, Andy?
Yeah, I'm at a high school in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I'm in Winnetka, which is on Lake Michigan. I'm only a couple of blocks away from Lake Michigan. Northwestern isn't too far from us. Evanston is a nearby community. And then I live about an hour and a half away in Barrington. So I've got a long commute in the mornings, and even longer commute in the afternoons. But I love where I live and I love where I teach. My wife is a phenomenal educator as well. She teaches at the high school in our community. So my boys will go through that local high school and hopefully have her as a biology teacher as freshmen.
Oh, okay, because that was going to be my next question, is if your kids went to school with you, but I didn't realize that your wife is an educator. But maybe I thought that, because I think you put something out about some kind of I don't know, a jar of candy or something, that your wife shares best practices with you too, or classroom management tips.
Absolutely. I'm always taking great ideas from my wife. Isn't that what educators do, don't we? We take a little bit from everything. And yeah, she loves using Jolly Ranchers to motivate certain students. So she recommended a glass jar and Jolly Ranchers as well. I love the fact that I can come home and I'm not even the best educator in my own house. And a highlight of being married to another teacher during the pandemic was live streaming a fetal pig dissection. As she's doing the dissection and I'm holding two different cameras and we're conducting a chat. Yeah, there weren't many highlights for the pandemic, but that was one of them.
So then your boys are going to go where your wife works.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Andy, I spoke in part of the introduction that you gave a TED Talk in 2019 called "This Is Not Your Parents' Health Class." Will you briefly just share with the audience what that TED Talk was about, and maybe even share how did you even get to be on that TED Talk series?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I have had people say, how did that come about? My local library is pretty fantastic, and they host TEDx talks. They host the smallest version that you can have. I think you can initially host a TEDx talk with 100 tickets, and then if the people who organize the conference jump through enough hoops, then they can expand the size of the audience. I knew that they had a series of TEDx presentations. So I did reach out to the librarian, jumped into her DMs and said, "Hey, I heard you're doing a TEDx session coming up. Good luck with that." And really what I was doing was just trying to, warm the conversation. So a couple of months later, when the response came back and said, "Hey, would you consider being involved in the TEDx?" I'm like, "Me? Oh, I don't know where you got that idea from." Of course, I'd sowed that seed. And because it was going to be on health anyway. So my talk was, yeah, this is not your parents' health class. And although I didn't, obviously, as you can tell from the accent, I didn't grow up in America. So I didn't experience an American health class experience. I'd seen enough in movies. I'd seen how health teachers had been portrayed. And I'd heard enough stories about how everything was taught by fear. It was fear-based as opposed to
Yep.
skills-based. And like you said, don't have sex or you'll get pregnant and die, quoted
Yep.
from Mean Girls, I believe. So yeah, I just wanted to get that message across. And really the takeaway was letting community members know that nowadays in health class, we are equipping students with a variety of really solid skills. And because they've got such strong voices and they want to advocate for change, when they graduate from high school, they're ready to start agitating. And really, as community members, we need to embrace that. We need to find space for their voices, listen to their ideas, because if not, they're probably going to steamroll over us. And I often say to my students, you might feel right now that your voice isn't being heard. Your parents are telling you, no, that's not a great idea. Or no, we can't do that. We've never done it that way before. And I say to my students, be optimistic because your time is going to come. So just continue plugging away, find your allies and spread your message because my generation probably hasn't done the best job in terms of, society. And maybe their generation might be there to pick up some pieces and turn things around a little bit. Loved it. Loved the TEDx. I love the fact that despite the fact that we've got a new batch of national health education standards, I think it still holds up. I love hearing from college professors saying that they've shared it with their pre-service teachers. I love hearing of people showing it at professional development as well. And if anybody's listening, I'm always available to sort of talk about that, field any questions that people might have. And I'm super thankful for that experience.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I think, is there rules with giving a TED talk? Like it has to be under certain time frame, 10, 15 minutes?
I think I was shooting for like a 12-minute kind of ballpark, and it came in at about 10. What's interesting is that when people meet me, I'm a little bit more animated and more upbeat and positive than I was when I was on the TEDx stage. I kind of took on a persona. I think I'd looked at a couple of other people and thought, that's a good look. I think I'll embrace that. So maybe next time I just need to throw in a few more words and talk a little bit quicker. But yeah, you're right. And I did the research. I bought the book, Talk Like a TED Talker. I looked at the fact that there's got to be something novel. You've got to get them emotionally, and there's got to be some kind of like takeaway as well. So I think I planned it well. I learned it. I kind of took it as a script, and definitely anybody who's seen it might even think, that sounds like my idea, or that sounds like my voice. There's a bit of Scott Todnam in there. There's a bit of Jessica Lawrence in there. Definitely I've taken their ideas, because I was the one that had the stage. I was able to kind of weave that into the narrative. So thank you for your kind words.
So
now, go ahead, Keith.
So as a preparation for it, did you reach out to Paul Zentarski, who's close to where you are, and because he had done one previously, is that somebody you can say, hey, Paul, I'm not far from you. I'm going to do this TEDx thing. What's the pointers?
Isn't Paul Zentarski wonderful? I love his TED Talk. Now, his was like a legit TED, I believe. His was on a bigger stage. So because it was more not prestigious, but because it was more organized or slightly more serious, he, I think, had to rehearse. He had a coach that talked him through it.
Wow.
So it was very controlled. Although I believe that there was a story that he wove in about a young girl, and that kind of came very late in the planning. Mine, there was a lot of trust. I went and met with the library and I said, hey, these are my ideas. And they were like, no, it's okay. We trust you. You've got this. So I was on the stage with, I think, 3 other presenters that time around. I know there are rules. I try to abide by the rules, but yeah.
Now, is this TED Talk, this is not your parents' health class, do you turn that into a keynote as well? Or is your keynote something different?
No, it's so funny. I've been fortunate to deliver keynotes across the country, starting with California alongside Andy Milne, my good friend, back in 2016, and I've never delivered the same one twice. Typically, I'll speak to the conference organizers. I'll find out what their theme is, and I'll weave it in. The same week that I did the TED Talk or the TEDx, I also gave a keynote in Oregon. Shout out to Naomi Hartle and Adam Howell out there. And then I also jumped down to Kentucky and did one on teachers have superpowers and how we're kind of, similar to superheroes. I do have my next podcast, keynote lined up. I'll be keynoting the stage in New York and Syracuse in November. And that one might have some life to it. I might repeat that at the PE Institute in the summer. I'll be heading down to North Carolina. Artie Kamia invited me to be down there as well. And that was going to talk about my journey as a veteran teacher. And I hate using that term veteran because it makes me feel old. But like you, I started teaching in 1994. So in those 29 years, I've learned a lot. I've taught in 6 different schools on 2 different continents. Coaching has taken me to 4 different continents. So I'm going to weave my story of the lessons that I learned. And then I'm going to weave in some theory in there as well and talk about the distinct stages that teachers go through, what we experienced at that time, what supports we perhaps needed. And then it's going to take us all the way through to retirement and planning for retirement. So maybe I reach out to some esteemed retired teachers and I say, hey, what advice do you have? And then there could be some slides on the screen, because that's where I'm at next in my journey, right? I'm close to mastery. I'm so close to mastery. Give me another 10, 15 years and I'll be the master teacher that my teachers deserve. But I have probably got one eye on retirement down the line. So I need to start speaking to individuals like yourself, and then also acknowledge the fact that whenever I go to a conference, we have such wonderful retired educators who continue to give back to the profession, right? To serve in different areas, to show up as vendors, push in the latest best practice. running podcasts, So shout out to all the retirees. And I've already, given a shout out to Megara and Mark. I didn't even know Mark had retired. He's so active. I didn't know, he's just dropped his new book. So, so that I'm excited to finalize how that's going to come together. And that should be a good 25, 30 minutes of a nice keynote.
Retirement gives you the freedom and opportunities that you didn't have before because you were in front of students all the time. It's
the math ain't mathing. The math ain't mathing because you started in 94 like me. I think I've got a good 10, 15 years left.
Oh, well, I started right away in North Carolina. I got a job right out of student teaching at the school where I student taught. And so I actually retired, Andy, in North Carolina with 28 and a half years of teaching. And I took 7 months off after I had my daughter. And then I had 1 year in Tennessee. So that Tennessee year didn't count towards retirement in North Carolina, but the spreadsheet just made sense, and to do contractual work and just to be able to have the freedom to write and do things. It's, I don't know. We're so young that it's a different world. It's very I can't say the word opportunistic. Yep. I love it. Like I'm reading The Anxious Generation now based on one of your books of the month or your book list over the summer. I forget where I got that, but anyways, you're going to have I think that keynote is going to go fantastic. And I think you said in New York and in the North Carolina PE Institute. Keith and I just came back from the North Carolina PE Institute, and that will resonate with that audience big time. And I think actually, spiraling, doing a keynote once, twice, 3 times, it just makes it even better. You just tweak it a little bit, and I think then you really get really good at that keynote craft.
Well,
don't ask me. That. I'm not an expert, but I think every time it's almost like doing a lesson that you've done with kindergarten on Monday, and then you do the same lesson in kindergarten on Friday. It's like press start, and you figure out all the all the things that you should change, and I think it just makes it better. To tell you the truth.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate the advice. And I do think that when this podcast is done and dusted, I think I might have to reach out to you and interview you for a podcast, because it sounds like you've got some great advice for educators out there.
I don't know.
She's living her best life.
I am. I'm really happy.
When she calls me and I'm sitting at work and she's like, "Oh, I just got back from a run. I'm gonna go, do some other wellness things," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sitting here writing back teachers and." Messing with budgets and stuff like that.
I get to read a lot. So
wonderful.
Which the Anxious Generation, you bring that up. I actually just put that out as a book study for our teachers to get literacy credit. I put out 2 this year. I put out that one and The Happiness Cure because I'm a big fan of Anders Hansen. And I know he has a couple of other books that I really need to dive into, but I really like the Real Happy Pill. So The Happiness Cure is kind of right along the edge of that one too.
Awesome. So, and I love that idea of bringing teachers together through a book. I think books and book studies and book clubs are a wonderful way to kind of, we all gather around that same book. We're all going to have different takeaways. We're all going to interpret it in a different way. And I think The Anxious Generation has been one of the hot books for a while. I know we're now at a point in its life where there are other narratives and people are sort of pushing back a little bit, and that's completely fine. And there's a wonderful podcast from the Puberty, This Is Awkward. And they talk a little bit about, that's the name of the podcast, not This Is Awkward. I love the podcast. But they talk about, some of the things that maybe he got wrong. So I'm looking at it through the lens of a teacher. I'm looking at it through the lens of a parent, and also, just through a critical lens as well. And there's going to be some takeaways, and there's going to be some that maybe I disagree with. And I think that, all of those responses are valid.
Well, I agree. So we've been doing book studies for our PE teachers as part of their renewal credits. And we started with some books that were pretty heavy into trauma because I want teachers to understand the traumas that some of these kids come to them with. But, everything is evolving. We're learning more about trauma. We're learning more about body regulation all the time. So even the stuff that we started with, some of that still stands today, but some things have kind of, that it's moved a little bit in a different direction, and how to handle it and how to address kids who may be going through traumatic situations.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's going to bring me to the question about your website, SlowChatHealth. And like Kim said, you have, around 12,000 followers, which is awesome. So when did you launch this? What was the purpose behind launching it? And, how did you, I kind of know what the purpose is, but how did you come up with the name?
I actually had a very dark purpose as well, but I'll tell you that one in a minute. I'll let you in. No one's ever heard this one before. So, it started in 2015. It's funny. I was looking today. Started in 2015. I think I was proctoring some finals, and I came up with the idea, and I pushed out the first blog post. And that was in the end of the school year. And in that year, I had as many viewers and people visit the site as I probably have had this month alone. So it's grown exponentially. It definitely it peaked during the pandemic. People were craving ideas, and I blogged a lot about a pandemic experience. Really, first of all, it came out of conversations with Jeff Bartlett and Justin Schleider. So Jeff Bartlett was considering maybe there was a space for a blog at the time. And I have to admit, I wanted to get a jump start on Jeff. So I thought, well, I'm going to beat Jeff to that. He's obviously since gone on and now has his own newsletter that you can sign up for. So definitely, if you're listening, make sure you subscribe to Jeff Bartlett's, I think it's Amped Up Learning newsletter. And then Justin Schleider had beat me to the punch with SlowChat PE. And the premise was, and it was at the time, a blog post would go out and then I would drip feed a question per day. So you'd read the blog post, there'd be 5 questions, and then on Monday, question 1 would go out, question 2, and so on. And eventually over time, the slow chat component dropped off, although I do think there is scope to bring it back. Twitter's changed a lot, but a slow chat might be better than a single sit-down chat. So there was that. It was an opportunity for teachers to share good ideas, best practice. Hey, I've got a great lesson that I think works for my students. Let me share that with you. And then, so I probably 50 to 70% of the posts are mine. Microblog month in May is phenomenal. I open up May and I push out somewhere between 40 and 50 guest posts, bite-sized blog posts on anything really. That's PE and health. So that's definitely opened up the door and allowed PE to have a presence. But then the dark secret behind it, I kind of had an eye on the fact that one day I might want to apply to be a teacher of the year. So I thought, what do I need to do to differentiate myself from other teachers out there? And having a blog presence was one of them. So I literally made a list of, I've got it somewhere on a piece of card, like 10 things I need to do and attend to them every week to just keep all those plates spinning. So when it came to applying and being considered for an award, I had so much evidence out there that I couldn't help but blow people away. And the tactic obviously worked. So yes, it's been running.
No shame, because it's quality and it's still going.
Thank you.
So zero shame. I find it very strategic, my friend.
Thank you. And you know what? If you're looking for a topic in health, instead of just Googling it, you could put SlowChatHealth and then the topic, and the chances are somebody has blogged about it in the time that we've been there. And I'm one of the moderators on the Health Central page on Facebook, and I do find myself sharing a lot of old blog posts. Sometimes I feel like I'm guilty of self-promotion, and I don't mean to be that, but I'm just letting people know that there's a lot of people before you have probably had similar ideas, and you might want to learn from what they have to say.
Well, you mentioned Health Teacher Central because I see that you respond to people's questions on there. And I've noticed on Health Teacher Central, and this is a Facebook group page to those who are listening or even watching on our YouTube channel when this comes out. But I've noticed that, there's probably new followers that on Health Teacher Central that I see some of the same questions that, may have been asked a year ago or 2 years ago, but these are new people coming on. Because in our profession now, we've got teachers coming in and leaving, coming in and leaving. We have unlicensed teachers. We have just teachers that are like, hey, you're an assistant. Can you just be a health teacher for? And they're searching for ideas, even though I'm like, well, just search the files and you'll see stuff. But they don't know. So I think it's wise when you have something that's quality. It doesn't matter if it's 5 years old. That's not old, actually. It's a best practice and it can help somebody and it is credible. Why not reshare? And a lot of times when you've shared something, like I know you just shared a blog that somebody, deep understanding literacy. I just read it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. From
That's
Maria Schneider.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Now I think that's a new one.
That's a new one. Maria Schneider. She originally wrote that to be hosted somewhere else, and in the end, it didn't get selected to be hosted. And she said, "Hey, I've worked hard on this blog post. Can you find a space for it?" So her blog post on disciplinary literacy. It's a very niche topic, but it's blown up. The numbers on that one already in the last couple of days are really high. So it's obviously being reshared in different circles. So yes, a big shout out to Maria and her work with Relaya Lent and how she's weaving literacy into her health class.
And for those who are going to go to SlowChatHealth and you see topics of the blogs, you're not just going to read the blog, you're going to also click on links that are inserted in that blog to resources, to websites. Like I read Maria's and there's this, I forget what it's called. It's I get it every morning now. The 5-minute fast forward. I'm looking it up right now. But it gives you a free 5-minute thing to do at the beginning of every, almost like a bell ringer.
Yeah.
But there are hidden gems in all your blogs that you actually house on SlowChatHealth that people just have to dive in and read. And then you're going to be like, okay, here, click there. And the amount of instructional resources and wisdom that comes out of those blogs, kudos to you and kudos to all those authors that you have had on. And something about you, Andy, too, that you have given credit to everybody that has written a blog. You have a separate page, or I think, of something that has everybody's name, and you just keep.
I do, and I need to update it. You're right, and I need to update it, and I am big on that. I'm very big on. I acknowledge the fact that very few of my ideas are unique to me and novel. Obviously, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm so connected that I can't help but take on board wonderful ideas. And I think it's so very important that you at least just give a shout out, right? Make an acknowledgement. And I'm always embarrassed if I've got an idea that I know came from someone and I can't think of it. And I want to say there was one time where I didn't give kudos to somebody and they DM'd me immediately and they said, "Hey, I think you've missed my name out." And I did, and I won't do it again. And that person knows who they are. Thank you.
Well, I think that's honorable. And I think that in a profession that's going to happen too, when the more that you're doing and producing and putting content out there, Andy, I think that it is to say to anybody who's listening and who's in the profession, you're an honorable person. And if that happens again, just reach out to you and you're going to fix it. And you're giving credit to so many people that it's okay, even at your level and even how many subscribers you have at SlowChatHealth, there's going to be there could be an error, a minor, thing that you might make a mistake. Just, I think in this age, I think that the people that know you know that you're not doing anything deceitful or hurtful because you're honorable. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here so badly. So let's talk about skills-based health, Andy. I shared earlier in the podcast that, you were the one who I feel was the catalyst that brought PE and health education together. And you showed that it was possible to deliver an effective skills-based health lesson focused on fun, delight, relevance, application, reflection. And tell me, when you started teaching health, I'm willing to bet maybe the term skills-based health instruction wasn't out there, because I think you said that you started when I was starting in 1994. So how did you learn the skills-based approach in your teaching?
So we haven't even talked about my origin story. So I was a PE teacher at heart. You
Oh.
know, the gym space was the only place that I ever got any kind of acknowledgement. I went to a very academic school. So when I went on to become the first person from my family to go to college, it just made sense to pursue my love of sport. So I was a PE teacher in England for 12 years. You could do a whole separate podcast on the reason why I'm now in America, but she is upstairs in the kitchen, probably listening. And then when I came to the States, my first big break was at Carmel Catholic, hence the reason why on social media I'm Carmel Health. And as a Catholic school, they realized that they didn't have a health program, they didn't have a curriculum. So they wanted somebody who had a lot of experience, but they didn't really have a lot of money to pay somebody. At the same time, I'd been in the States for a year waiting for my green card to come through, and I was desperate to find a good job. So we were the perfect match, right? I was going to work for less than my worth. They were going to get more experience than they could get. And they left me in the basement of the school and said, right, write the curriculum and deliver it. So I didn't come to health teaching with that negative experience, but I always knew what was good for kids. So immediately I was diving into the youth risk behavior survey, and I was jumping on the CDC because it just made sense that that's where some of the really good information was. And I was being creative, and I think pedagogy is my strength. I'm definitely not an academic. I don't teach the way I teach because the theory says it's good. I haven't read a theory and said, right, I'm going to embrace that. I've taught what I thought was the ways I thought were best for kids. And I like to make my lessons engaging, and they're movement based, and they're relevant, and they're memorable, and they're novel and unique, and all of those things. And then for me, I would say skills-based health was birthed in 2016 when Holly and Sarah wrote their book, The Essentials of Skills-Based Health, of Teaching Skills-Based Health, or of teaching health education. And that's when I realized that, there is something to this. And of course I jumped on that because that's what I was looking for next in my teaching. I have to admit, I thought Holly and Sarah invented skills-based health. They didn't. I know it was around before that. Shout out to anybody who came before that. I mean, Mary Connolly is the godmother of skills-based health, as far as I'm concerned. But it was the marriage of engaging pedagogy with relevant skills. And then, as I often say to people, the drug of choice is going to change, but the skills of refusal and the skills of communication are always going to endure, which I think helps sell your class to parents. Parents might be a little bit suspicious about what we're teaching, what messages we're sending, particularly if they're basing it on what their experiences were. And if I tell parents that really all I'm trying to do is give your kid the skills that they need to navigate the trials and tribulations of high school and beyond, well, who wouldn't want that of their child? Parents are struggling anyway. Some parents don't want to talk about our topics, and they're hoping that teachers are. So, although I'll say to students, I really hope that your number one go-to is your parents. I acknowledge that for some of you, you have a wonderful line of communication, and you'll go to your parents with everything. And for some of you, it's the last person you're ever going to speak to about certain things. All right. So I acknowledge that I've got the whole range of relationships with parents in the room. I just do the best I can. And now that the new health standards are out, it's allowed me and my coworkers to just go back to the lessons that we've taught and honed over the last couple of years and look at them with a fresh lens and see how can we weave any changes in to just make them update them and make them more contemporary.
And I just saw that Shape America has been putting out on social media that they have created a document, and I'm not certain how. I want to say it just came out, but it may have been out for a couple months. But I haven't had a chance to look at it. But someone put on that Health Teacher Central. What is the difference in the old health education standards and the new health education standards? And can you show me a side-by-side comparison of the differences? Well, Shape America's done that. So I have not looked at that document. I saw at the national conference when we were in Cleveland this year, when it was rolled out to everybody and launched the new health and PE standards. I didn't see great change in the national health education standards because I think the practice of skills-based is still new to people. It's been uncomfortable for those who wanted that stand and deliver and PowerPoint slide by slide by slide by slide. and letting them
Mhm.
go to let them grow is a little bit uncomfortable to some teachers. But I do know that some of the language changed a little bit, the National Health Education Standards skills. But I noticed the PE standards, those seem to be a little bit more of a difference from the old standards. What's your take?
Yeah, I've got copies of both of them on my desk at school. Thank you to my boss for ordering a couple of copies. Yeah, I think there's a bigger change in PE, and I haven't really dived into them as much yet because it's still a work in progress for me. But I did recently, just today, I printed off the crosswalk for
Yeah.
PE to give to a pre-service teacher working with us right now. And there's also one for health as well. So you can do the comparison and see what was in 2013 and what exists today. You're right, there is a change in language. The language change is more inclusive. It's also, it's deeper. It's like they've taken the Bloom's taxonomy and they've moved deeper into that to make the verbiage more engaging. You actually have to access the materials more and do more with the content. Right now, my biggest takeaway is I'm constantly saying to myself, it's the health of self and others. Everything is others. So I'm trying to weave in, not only is it the health of me, but also those around me, my community. So we're looking at that a lot more. Like I said, I work alongside Andy Milne, who was another National Health Educator of the Year. We've also got 2 down in the dance department as well. We're stacked with talent. We just did our goal setting unit. And instead of traditionally going through everything and then setting our own health goal, we set it up so that we put students in pairs and one took on the role of a goals coach. And through a series of interview questions, they interviewed their partner, and then the goal setting was for their clients. So off the back of their interview, they had to then write a goal for somebody else. So just slightly a different take on it. You're showing me that you can set, you can give a health enhancing goal for somebody else. And then the idea that we had, but we didn't go with it this time, but once we get our head around it, we probably will. I then wanted the client to write a Yelp review. And the review would talk a little bit about how were they communicating? What did the communication feel like? How did they feel as a client? Did they feel listened and valued? We could weave in some communication skills here, but then they could also then critique the goal that was set, and they could say, this wasn't particularly measurable, and I don't think these action steps were good enough. And I asked to give 4 different habits that I can embrace, and I think he only gave me 2. So then you've got some peer-to-peer assessment as well. So there's a lot more, and that just all kind of came from reading through the latest national health standards.
I really like that Yelp review. That's
a skill. That's a skill.
Yeah. Oh, huge. I love it. Oh man.
So are you guys telling me that you guys don't like the old PowerPoint?
Death by PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint.
Insert Michael Scott going PowerPoint.
I don't even use PowerPoint. I've been on Canva for the last 5 years.
It's the best. Yeah. No.
So this next little part for me is going to be interesting, as the observer here of 2 brilliant health minds, right? I can say I spent most of my career at the elementary school, so the amount of health that I taught classroom-based was really 0. I mean, I had to weave it into, other things. But I'm going to put you both on the spot here, and I'm going to see if I can get you guys to collaborate. And let's see, in your TED Talk, you do talk about using the YRBS data, and that, one of the things that stood out was binge drinking as an issue and topic for your school. So, and that YRBS data really should prioritize kind of what you talk about health-wise. And, I totally agree with that, because that's keeping up to date with what's going on with your kids, right? And I'm not sure there's a lot of PE teachers that do that, at least around us. But
or they don't know about it, Keith.
Correct, they don't, right?
Yeah.
And we're kind of getting, here we're getting a little hamstrung in some of the questions that we could ask kids now because of different laws that have been passed. So
in different states.
Yeah, right. So can you guys both create a skills-based health lesson on binge drinking? Ready, go.
Yeah, so you go on Health Central and you ask what's the best movie to show, and then you show a movie for 2 lessons, and then you're done. Oh, then you go to Teacher Pay Teacher and you find the one with the cute font. It's probably been stolen from somebody else and they haven't given any attribution, but that's okay. And then I think we're good. Right?
I think you're
Move
right.
on.
If I just put in what movie.
ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna say ChatGPT has saved me a lot of time in terms of things like, and that's a completely different question, right? ChatGPT for like creating question prompts is phenomenal. I don't know about you, then Kim. I think in terms of planning, I do backward by design. I kind of work out what is it, what's the big idea, what's the takeaway. So we want to do something to do with binge drinking. Well, what's the skill that we want to weave into that? I mean, that's going to depend on what you've already covered in the class or in the school or in the sender schools. For me, I'm a big fan of advocacy. I love my podcast project. So I would take the skill and then work out what evidence do I want to show? Like, what's the assessment piece?
Mm-hmm.
So it's binge drinking. I want them to maybe advocate for greater awareness within the community using teen-specific language, working in groups. They're going to do some research. They're going to script, record, and send a podcast to me. And then I have to think about the learning experience and how am I going to instruct that? Maybe they'll listen to podcasts that came before them from their peers. Maybe
I like that.
I take, right? And I do that. And that's a good tip because of a lot of what we create, because there's a lot of content creation nowadays and a lot of kids want to be a content creator. I think it's a wonderful thing to create digital artifacts. You take the best digital artifact that you got this year and then you share it with the next semester. And if the only example they've ever seen is the best thing that you've ever had, that becomes the flaw, right? And now students get to build upon that as well. So digital artifacts are another great way to prove that I'm doing what I'm doing in the classroom. They can share it with their parents. And if there ever comes a time when somebody wants to cut my minutes or cut the classes, I can say, well, look at all this great work that we're doing, including feedback from students. So break that down into 3 parts then. So what are you looking for? What's the big idea and the skill? Weave that in. What's the evidence you want to take from it so students can prove that they've got the knowledge and the understanding and can do the thing? And then in the experiences, maybe give them some practice opportunities as well. I never assess my students unless they've shown enough practice opportunities so that when they are assessed, they can't fail. They can't fail because I've given them so many no-fail opportunities anyway to hone their craft. Coach doesn't send you out into a game until you can do a layup against one defender, then 2v1. And only once you've done all of those slightly fake, slightly unreal situations, can you take that skill into the game. It's the same in health class. Can you take the skills that we're learning in health class in that slightly unreal, no-fail situation in the classroom, and then convert it to the game of life? All right. So communication skills, binge drinking advocacy is an activity that we might do in health class, but there might come a time when you're in college and you actually want to advocate for greater binge drinking awareness because it's impacting your fraternity or your sports team or your local community because somebody died in a car accident.
So
I did a lot of talking there, Kim.
No,
we were supposed to be working
this
together.
is where I think that if, let's say I was at your school and we were like how you and Andy Horn collaborate. A lot of times, ideas springboard from other ideas. So love that idea about taking student authentic work from semesters prior to show and tell to the students that are in your classroom of today. Love that. I used to do that too, but mine wasn't digitized back in 2007.
Right.
But we did do, basically posters, storybooks, infographics. Then they would do something. I forget. I had these little cameras. I forget what it was called that I would check out in the media center. And they would
the cameras with the little red button.
Yes. And they would go out in the hallway and I would give them a press pass. So I would inform my administrator saying, hey, my kids are in the hallway. It's not chaotic. They're there in a purpose. But I learned the hard way, Andy. I would, at first, before I did it back in like 2007, I sent the kids out. They're like, oh, we're going to create a video. Great. Make them write a script beforehand. Okay. I learned the hard way because they would go out there, they would create something, but it was just nothing. They would come back and be like, you just spent 2 days doing, and you didn't even hit the rubric. I look at things when things need to change. I need to change. That was poor on me not to say I need a script first. But anyways, okay, let me go into our lesson on binge drinking. I think at first, the backwards design, definitely what do kids need to know? And then what activities are you going to do? And how are you going to assess? And how do you know that they know it? So I would first set up the classroom, in which I'm sure, you probably already do. But I think of instruction before kids even come in. How that environment looks, I would set it up in tables. I loved having up to 4 people per table group, or the desks in groups in, pods of 4, so that it really was, hey, a collaborative, and we're going to communicate, and we're going to, discuss in this class and work together. So I'd have that. The skills that I see in binge drinking is because, there's 8 national health standard skills, but there are so many skills that in one lesson could be 2 or 3, right? It's not like one skill, one lesson, there it is, check off. I look at it like binge drinking, apply a decision-making process. So I'd probably introduce that decide decision-making, analyzing influences, right? And I would probably weave in, I want them to practice scenarios like refusal skills. We talked about AI a little bit, and I know school districts are scared about AI right now, and I'm sure there's policies, but imagine you and I are partners at one of those tables, and your job is to pressure me as much as possible to maybe even cheat on a test, or, lie to my guardians. And I have to practice refusal skills back to you, and you have to try really hard to try to convince me. And I have to practice that. But I read somewhere, and I'm not sure where I got this, maybe even ChatGPT or AI gave it to me. Why not, instead of you trying to convince me, you actually give the kids a prompt, and the bot, the chat, is actually being that person, and you have to go back and forth with that, the AI, because the prompt would be like, okay, act as, do not give up, act as a 10th grade student, and trying to convince your friend to, lie to your parents to say that you're going to the movies, but instead you're going to a party. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Be very convincing, being strong. Don't give in, no matter what. Or so, you have to put the prompt properly. How cool would that be? I think that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're probably only 2 or 3 years away from that being a voice, right?
I know.
It's an Alexa device. They're actually verbalizing it to you.
How cool. So let's talk about binge drinking then. So we talked about like skills and so forth. And, decision making, you said also, you want to be sure that, well, it's demonstrating health enhancing behaviors, the refusal skills, right?
Yeah.
I thought, but is there any content? Do we teach anything about binge drinking in that lesson? Because we started out in our introduction that we both, or I did, because I had health in the United States, it was fear-based. See, this is where I struggle a little bit, because I think it's a myth that you don't teach any content, but I think you just have to teach the functional, concise information. I don't want to scare them, but I need to teach them what binge drinking is for those who may not even know, and that it's dangerous and how it affects the body.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I've got sophomores, and we actually do our alcohol education on the freshman campus. My students are lucky that they get a freshman health experience and a sophomore health experience as well. But no, I think you're right. I think they need to know. I mean, yeah, we all know that drinking to excess is bad for you. I think it's important to know why. I think it's important to know what may occur or could occur if you are drinking to excess. But you're right. I don't want to scare them. I think you definitely provide them with the information, the local community information. So the YRBS data
Oh
is
yeah.
important to say, it's this rife in our community, right? This is what's going on in our community. Perhaps they even know of one or two, kids who have passed away as a result of, accidents that have been drug and alcohol related. But yeah, they definitely want to learn those skills of refusal, etc. I mean, you could dive even deeper and say, what is it about our community that means that this is the drug of choice? What might occur in our what might eventually happen in our community if our guardians continue to take a permissive approach towards alcohol and alcohol education? I mean, you could definitely take it deeper in that respect as well. But I think you're right in saying that ultimately you could take multiple skills and apply them to the content area. I don't know, some people are struggling to teach a curriculum that is heavily content led, and others will start with the skills first and then weave in the relevant content later on.
Yeah, see, I struggle with that too, because I've seen where people have created curriculums with sections of just the skill. I'm like, wait, substance abuse to, let's say, community and environmental health to, let's say, even mental health and wellness. I'm like, it's like weaving all these topics under all these standards. I just couldn't wrap my head. So I ended up doing like topics and put all the standard skills as they integrate. And I love doing activities that do, and to our listeners and viewers, I don't think there's a wrong way when you're doing that. It's just about teaching skills, though. Give them those everyday skills. Like, I don't think that there needs to be a debate on what is the right way. I just think it's what works for you as an instructional delivery person, as a teacher.
Yeah. And that's why it's tough when I was going to say it's tough when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, what do you recommend?" I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know your community. I don't know what your school allows. I don't know how you teach. If you have the best interest of your students at heart, then I trust that you're probably going to take your lesson in the right direction. I don't know Keith's students, and I don't know what that community is all about. So, and I appreciate that there's listeners who are listening now saying, this all sounds great in Andy Milne's class in Illinois. I can't talk about this topic. I can't use this language because I'm going to get pushback from my community. And kudos to you. And if that is the case, then I think that's when skills are really, really important. If you can't teach the content, but you know that your students are screaming out for the content, if you give them the skills, they can probably go away and search that content themselves. If I talk about accessing valid and reliable sources of information, and I have to do a very dry topic in the community, well, if you're that member of the LGBTQ community who cannot talk about it in school, you can maybe go away and use those skills to then find the information you need, and the community service providers that can probably support you. And then, hey, maybe we're going to help kids, stay alive.
Yeah, I always love having kids do authentic work, like project-based assignments, learning, like you shared that you would do. But anyways, that was fun. I think that's my favorite thing to do, is to just chat it up with a slice of pizza and don't have a pint, but a pizza and a pint, and sit at a table and just converse about best practice and lesson creation, collaboration. So Keith, thank you for that. That was unique to the podcast, but I'm glad I had that opportunity with Andy.
Well, let me tell you something. Y'all just took me back to my high school days where, in a group project, I just said, sign my name, and I just let the professionals do the work. I'll take, hey, just put my name in there. I'll gladly take that A that you guys got.
Oh, no, my friend. My students had to all turn in their own assignment. They could collaborate and help one another, but they had to do their own assignment.
And while you guys were having this great, it was nice to have a slice of pizza and take it all in with the information.
You ready to leave central office and be a health teacher, Keith?
Absolutely not. Thank you.
In Slow Chat Health, you always have a book of a month, or in the summer, you have your summer read list. And I shared earlier that one of the books that you and we've talked about, is the anxious generation. I think, did you even have meaningful PE in there one time?
Yeah.
Or,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That book's had played a big role in my life. Yeah.
Oh, in fact, meaningful PE, this book, when I read, I annotate and write questions. Then in the beginning of the book, I even write, like, remember page 5, page 7, but tons of ideas on just getting how to get students to reflect in this meaningful PE, where I turned into where I'm like, well, that could just say meaningful health education.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. Oh,
shouldn't it be relevant? Shouldn't health be relevant? Shouldn't it be fun? Shouldn't there be joy? Shouldn't there be socialization? All of the things.
Loved it. But what is your process of actually advocating for a book of a month, and how do you get on the list?
Oh, why? Have you got a book? Have you got a book coming?
No. I'm just really curious because they're all good.
Yeah, there's so many good books out there. There's so many wonderful people to follow on social media. There's so many great podcasts as well. And, sometimes somebody's got a great podcast and they also have the book, and they're also, you're currently tweeting them as well. I started with the book of the month because I thought that was just an easy way to weave additional content into the blog. Then I realized that you can set yourself up as an affiliate account. So I'll make pennies on the dollar as well. So I'm not, I can't hide from that as well. And then, I'm constantly looking for the next big thing. I'm a voracious purchaser of books. I couldn't really tell you how many books I finish. It's like a pizza. I think I'm going to eat the whole thing, and then there's always a couple of pieces left over. I'll do all the chapters, and I might not finish it. But they're usually something that is health related or related to our content. Usually, it's about self-improvement. So Anxious Generation was a perfect one because it targets health, also targets parenting. And then I've kept a record of all of the books, and there's a list on Amazon as well. It's just something I like. Occasionally someone will come to me and say, hey, I've got a book. Would you be interested in pushing it? And I have done that. And occasionally I've been cheeky and reached out to publishers and said, I see you've got a book coming out in 2 months' time. I'd love to make it a book of the month if you could send me a free one. And they do. If you don't ask, you don't get, right? So there's definitely been a couple of freebies on there as well. I'm being totally transparent. I buy all the books, or I get the books, I read them. And I don't always pay full price. Sometimes I go and get a used copy because I think that's a great way to purchase books, because books can be expensive. And then there might be great books as well. I love the fact that Mark's got a new book out, Mark Housel. I haven't read it, but I'll definitely tweet about it. So I'd like to support other people who are writing books within our community. Just that there's only 12 months of the year, so I can only have 12 books of the month, plus my summer reads, of course.
You said cheeky.
Cheeky. Oh, it's always cheeky. You have to throw in some Britishisms every now and again. It's just enough to keep my students love it. I'll say, oh yeah, you can throw that in the rubbish afterwards. Just put it in the bin, and kids think it's hilarious. Oh, we're drinking water and taking vitamins. They think when I say condoms, they think condoms is funny. But hey, I don't care as long as you wear it.
Oh my goodness.
So that's going to bring me to my last of the easy questions before we get into the heavy stuff, because the heavy stuff is coming. All right. Okay. But so the last serious question, right, is what advice would you give to, a reluctant or, a scared PE teacher who's forced to teach health? I mean, so basically, what advice would you give the first year teacher that I was, where I was like scared as heck to teach health?
Yeah. I hope, and that happens all the time. We see it in the Health Central page that people find out today that they're teaching health next week. I certainly hope that you're in a school where they want you to be successful, because I've definitely seen teachers who have been thrown into that situation and then not given any support, and then lo and behold they struggle. And if they've got a choice between hating their job or leaving the profession, sometimes leaving the profession or leaving your environment is a lot easier. I do think that there is actually scope for a curriculum that does weave health successfully into the PE curriculum, because I think with limited minutes and staff shortages, I think that can be a definite model. don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Reach out for help. Like we said, go to the Facebook page, check out the blogs, listen to the podcasts, find a mentor. I'm throwing lots of ideas on here as well, but definitely don't do it alone. But then sometimes you might have to do it alone, right? Maybe you've got an idea that you want to weave health into your PE program, and your two other teachers are like, well, we've never done it that way before. So then you can say, well, will you let me do it in my gym, with my students? Can I just see if it works? And if it does, can I share some of my successes with you? I mean, that's a good way to sort of weave it in if that's something you're looking for. But definitely just share, collaborate, understand that if you are doing it, not many people are doing it to high levels of success. So doing something is better than nothing. And if you want to reach out to me, I'll definitely help out if I can.
Well, I'll tell you,
I liked how,
Andy, it was, now granted, it was a different time when I first started, right? We didn't have the internet, we were just on the cusp of that. And the funny thing,
when you started, Keith.
When I started, right? So
yeah.
It wasn't long after you guys. So let's go ahead and,
I know.
Calm down there. I'm not that far behind you. But, oftentimes in the situation that I was in, was the other PE teachers were coaches, and they weren't very good at being a mentor for me when it came to the health part. And at that time, Kim can attest to this, our elementary PE group, we met once a month and shared ideas together. The high school teachers didn't, because they're all coaches. And I had a great cooperating teacher during my student teaching, but it's still, didn't have the same students that I had at the school that I got my first teaching job in. But now the thing is, I think when we have resources like yourself, like Kim, and all these extra resources, we're so resource rich now, right? So it's almost like,
you got to filter out.
You can go on YouTube right now and probably see a really good lesson. And you just have to take the time to seek it out, right? Versus, hey, we used to have to teach straight from the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I made that joke in my TEDx that I thought was hilarious, and no one laughed. Where I apologized that if your health was being taught by a coach who was more interested in X's and O's than X's and Y's. It's funny, but I'd have to explain it. And if you have to explain your joke, it's not funny. But you're right? But then I found that
I got it.
But now, because we are trying to give our students skills, if we do our students a disservice, and if they realize that we are doing a bad job, they're going to start to speak up, and they are going to start to advocate and say, well, hang on a second, don't we deserve better? And health education in the States has got a long way to go. I acknowledge that and I tell my students, you're fortunate that you get a pretty positive health experience from people who want to teach health, and they're certified to teach health, and they've been recognized for their health teaching. But you're going to go on to college, and you're going to meet people who have never had a conversation about consent and don't even know what that looks like and sounds like.
Right.
So,
personal boundaries.
Be prepared. Some of them may have got health, but it wasn't even scientifically accurate.
Right.
So, take these skills and do your best with them. If you're, and I'm just going to say one last plug. If that is you, if you are that teacher that's doing your best and you're surrounded by people who don't want to support you, I'm sorry. I hear you, I see you. If you can reach out to your state organization and at least pair up with a couple of like-minded individuals, it can only help you. And that was my journey. I was an island on my own. And then I kind of put my head above the parapet. Now I'm smashing my analogies. And I went to IAFID in Illinois. I saw some wonderful presentations, and I thought, oh, maybe I can do that. So then I started to present, and then I thought, oh, maybe I could get involved, and I served on the board. And then that led to other things that have eventually got me to my current situation, where I'm on the board of directors for Shape America. And I started off like you, teaching in the basement with no windows, with no one checking on me. But if you search hard enough, you'll find it.
That's very true. I use the phrase, I think, to providing advice to health teachers is, use more of them, less of you, meaning let the kids, like you don't need to stand and deliver. I think that the fear in reluctant PE teachers becoming a health teacher is they feel like they have to be the disseminator of all information. They have to stand and deliver, and they have to be content experts. You just got to really know the skills and teach those kids the skills. Because like you said, Andy, they're going to use their fingertips if they're curious enough to find the information on a certain topic. Yep. So dangle the carrot, make them curious, make them want to learn, and emphasize those skills on a daily basis. I only had limited health education instruction in North Carolina, 45 days in 9th grade. But I got the opportunity to also be a student council advisor at my high school. And when I realized that information, those skills in health, which we didn't have those national health education skills when I started in 2007 as a health teacher. But I realized that those skills actually transferred into student council and what those kids were advocating. They were making decision making. It was so cool to see how it transfers. And I think that's the true essence of what we do in health education or as a teacher, is that where you see that transference into other areas, and like student council, organizing a prom, or, doing, I don't know, it was just cool. But anyways, all right, well, I could talk to you all day. But now this is the serious part that Keith was trying to get to, that, you really got to put on your thinking cap for these, because this is called Quick Bites. And I'll be honest with you, I totally forgot that we were even doing this because I was being very nerdy and couldn't wait to just, talk to you about pedagogy and practices in health education. But anyways, so Quick Bites is this. We're going to give you some just random questions, and as quick as possible, first thought that comes to your mind, then you just answer it. All right. So before we get started on Quick Bites, let's do our little Quick Bites intro.
All right, Andy. So like I said, this is the heavy stuff, right? This is the part that I live for here. The health stuff, you guys are the pros, and I just get to sit back and just watch that train drive. Now, we do not share the questions that we ask before this. So Kim doesn't know what I'm going to ask. I don't know what she's going to ask. She's a little lamer than I am. I'm going to ask you like good, thoughtful stuff. And I've got four questions for you. So we'll start with this one. What is the worst, in your opinion, what is the worst sandwich ingredient?
This might be the hardest question I've ever been asked. Artichoke. Why would you put that in your mouth?
Great question.
And on a sandwich.
Yeah.
I can see it being in some kind of Italian sandwich. Artichokes.
Fair.
Question two. Question two.
So I'm afraid to even ask this, because I think I'm going to just, brutalize it. So is it football or football?
Interesting. I've been here long enough that I'm constantly code switching. Okay, so my kids play soccer. But we went to England and we went to Chelsea's football stadium. Sometimes I'll smash it up. Sometimes I get it wrong. It's garage. You know what I'm talking about. So you don't have to point it out to me. If you do, it's a microaggression. I've been here long enough, right? Soccer.
Love it.
All right. What musical instrument is the most annoying?
The recorder. Why do we put those in the hands of children and just teach them? I don't know what you play here. In England, it's London's Burning. All kids can play London's Burning.
Hot cross buns.
Hot cross buns.
In fourth grade, they get those recorders. Hot cross buns.
Yep. They do recorder karate, and if they can play as the Saints go marching in, they get like the black belt.
So if you were not teaching health or PE, or just let's say if you weren't teaching, what would you do?
Oh, wow. I guess if I wasn't teaching health or PE, that means I've probably retired. So if I'm retired, I'm going to read all the books that I know I've started. I'm going to cook a lot. I'm going to walk a lot. I'm going to jump on that Peloton. Here it is, just right behind me.
Yeah.
Find me on the leaderboard as so soulful. But I don't know what I would have been in terms of other strengths. Sport was always my life, right? I was always going to do something sports related. Maybe I'd have been a sports coach. Maybe I'd have continued coaching soccer. But yeah, but you know what? I absolutely love what I do. I love it, and I hope that comes across. I love what I do, and that's why I don't even enjoy signing up for committees, and I don't even enjoy, I don't want to chase any kind of position that takes me out of the classroom. I absolutely love my job. And if any students are watching, one, why are you watching this? But two, if you are, I love you as students. There's
Well, we will put this on YouTube,
right?
so then I'll send you the link. So, all right, Keith.
Love my students. All
right, I've got two more.
All right. Well, then I'll let you do those final two because I don't have any others. So you go, Keith.
If animals can talk, which would be the rudest?
My cat literally and the older it's got, the crankier it's got. I don't want to know what it's saying, but I have a feeling it's exceptionally rude.
That's fair, because you're on their terms. A dog is going to
probably laughing at me. It's laughing at me for saying garage.
All right, so the last one. This could be an easy one. I mean, you might have a quick answer for this, but I want you to back it up with a little bit of explanation. Would you rather have dinner with a zombie or a vampire? And why?
I wouldn't want to have. Well, I would end up being dinner for both of them, right?
Correct.
Probably a vampire. Because I could live as a vampire. This Northern European skin. I hate the sun. I love to sleep. So I think I've got a future as a vampire. Thanks for the inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming to October. It's a good little. I always look at the vampire. They've been around a lot longer. They've seen some things. So before they take a bite, I can say, "So what was the Renaissance like?"
I love it.
What really happened during this time period?
That would be cool. Andy, thank you so much for coming on. I think before we go, though, for those who are listening, you're going to be, can you give a shout out to where you're going to be headed for conferences this year? So in case people want to go and see you. So share where you're going.
Yeah, I'm returning to IAFID. I haven't been to the Illinois conference purely because I've been double booked. Haven't been to Illinois since pre-pandemic. They're now a new location in Tinley Park. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I'll be presenting alongside Andy Horn. We're getting the team back together again, people. And we're going to talk about sexually explicit material. So we're going to follow on from the good work that Christopher Pepper's been doing. And how do we have those conversations with students about being more mindful of the materials that are probably going to come their way. So I'm going to be there. Then I'm going to be in New York in November. I'm teaching a session on meaningful PE. I'm doing one on the new health standards, plus delivering a keynote. Then in July, I'll be in North Carolina. Thank you, Artie, for the introduction. Returning back to the PE Institute. What a wonderfully friendly conference. My family came along last time. We're coming again down to Asheville. I'm really looking forward to meeting Dale Sidebottom, who's coming up from Australia. And then then you'll see me in Baltimore. I'll be at the Shape America conference in Baltimore. If things go my way, I'll be doing a session on dimensions of wellness with Sarah Gitchahaman, who's phenomenal. And then, not even announced yet, I'm going to be delivering a lecture with Donald Howley on meaningful PE. He'll talk about it from a theoretical college standpoint, and I'll talk about my experience of kind of weaving it into my lessons at a K through 12 environment. So 4 conferences lined up in the next 6 months or so.
Well, for those who are listening, please make sure that you either go to one of those 4 conferences, see Andy. He's phenomenal. Follow him on Twitter. Go to Health Teacher Central. You'll see where he's posted things. But most importantly, after this, please go to SlowChatHealth.com. And you're going to go down a rabbit hole. You're going to be seeing all these instructional resources, activities, blogs that lead to links. And it's going to inspire you and influence you and motivate you. So, Andy, thank you for launching that. And thank you for doing everything that you are doing to advocate for quality health and PE and bringing those 2 disciplines together. So really appreciate you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Keith. And thank you for this medium as well. Please continue doing it. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I think I'd make a good podcast guest, why don't you reach out to Kim and Keith?
Thank you. We'll see you later, Andy.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you later.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye now. Bye.
All right, Keith. This is my favorite part. Well, not one. It's one of my favorite parts. The aha moment. I'll let you go first.
Listen, I'm going to be real honest here. It's hard for me to come up with a specific moment. The 2 of you were geeking out. The 2 of you are health people. I just sat back and really watched, 2 Lamborghinis roll down the highway. It was so good. He's done a lot of things. I love, the passion. I mean, it just shows, we've had some really, really cool guests on here, but I think there was something about how much his passion for teaching health comes out just in the energy of answering the questions, right? So aha wise, it's hard to really peg a certain moment. I really tried to think of a few things, but I'm like, he's oozing how much he loves to talk about health, right?
Well, and how much he loves his students.
Right.
It's not
absolutely.
just about health, it's just his love for students that really came across.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's, every now and then we have a guest that has that kind of energy, but this really shined, especially, here we're on the East Coast and it's getting late. And I'm like, wow, I want to go run a marathon. I want to jump on the Peloton and hit him up right now and say, let's go. Let's see what you got.
Well, because he threw it out there quickly. I think it's so soulful.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that on Peloton, because you have a Peloton, I have a Peloton. 2 things resonated with me. Aha. 1, I thought it was great that he said cheeky. 2, that he threw that out there about, hey, why don't you just go on and see what kind of movie you can, put in and watch for a lesson, and boom, there it is. Because so many times I see, even on Health Teacher Central, and I think you do better when you know better. So I'm not pointing the finger and saying, bad on you, teacher. But I found it where it's so hard to do all my lessons in the limited health instructional time that I did have. Even if I had 90 days with 90 minutes, I would barely get through all the activities I want to get through with my kids. I wouldn't have time to put in a movie.
Right.
So, I see that a lot, saying, hey, does anybody have a movie on this? And if you do you have questions that can be used for a debriefing and my kids can answer? So I love that he actually brought that out there. And my favorite was really about how he emphasized skills, yep. And how that transfers, and using that YRBS data. And absolutely. I never thought of sharing the YRBS data with students. So that was an aha moment with me. Look at it as an instructor, find out what are, community issues, address those, prioritize those by teaching the health skills, and then never thought of actually using that with the students, though. Not in a fear way, but in an educational, informative way. So that's my aha moment.
That makes sense.
Anything else? Well, it's that time then that I'm going to say this.
And you didn't have any pizza today, did you?
I did, but you know what? I was talking so much and sharing. I still have one more left.
That's why I'm telling you. I sat back with the popcorn. Listen, I'm why would I interrupt two minds like that? I'm just going to sit back and
No, I
pizza.
did. I learned so much from him that, that you saw me in central office. Like I went off of before we didn't have skills when I was a teacher in 2007 through 2014 when I was teaching health. But I did what he mentioned about the common sense approach and what our kids
Sure.
need. And I did know that I needed to use more of them, less of me. Backwards design, I gave kids choices, projects. It just made sense to me. Conversations, discussions. I never thought that, teaching by fear was going to get my kids to actually apply the skills and be like, okay, well, then I'm not going to binge drink. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
that's not going to happen.
But taking your using more of them and less of you, that's something across the board, especially when you're doing PE and not just health. When it's more of them practicing the skills and doing that, they're going to get better than if you sit up there and want to talk for an hour on how to dribble a darn basketball and not give them the opportunity. So,
right.
We both learned that at an early time. Take a stopwatch. Click how many, every time you talk, start it. Every time you stop talking, stop it and see how much time you waste talking and how much can I drop that time to let the kids play more.
Right. I mean, I also took my own experience of when the teacher lectured, I was in la la land. After like 10 minutes, I mean, not even 10 minutes, probably 5 minutes, I was in la la land. I had no idea. I took notes, but then I came home and my mom had to sing songs and tell stories and act out, and we role played. And I was like, oh, that's what the teacher said? Why didn't she just do it that way then? But anyways, all right, Keith, this is the time I'm going to say, slice you later.
Ciao.